So welcome, 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 and thank you very much for joining us today on this pain to power, let's journey, a healing journey from chronic pain. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how your healing journey, or let's say starting from the beginning of your chronic pain and how you kind of came out of it.
Sure. Hi, thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here. So my chronic pain, I thought, was coming from a series of injuries. I had a lot of trauma in my 20s. I was mugged 3 times. The first time I was attacked in a nightclub and my skull was fractured right here. I know you can't see it, but I can put my finger right on it. The second time I was walking at 6 o'clock in the evening and 3 men came out of the dark, slammed me on the ground, beat the living daylights out of me, and I had 3 herniated discs in my lower back from that assault. And then a few years later, I was in London and I was attacked by a young teenage boy who threw a bicycle at my head and shoulders. And I took the impact in this side of my head whilst I was riding a bicycle, so it was pretty powerful. And he actually fractured C2 and C3 vertebrae in the top of my neck, which is, he broke my neck, although I didn't know it at the time, which is quite amazing. Like, the body is so incredibly powerful and intelligent. I think it held it together because I was not in a good place at the time. And obviously after all these things kept happening to me, I had PTSD. PTSD had only just been established as a diagnosis at that time. So all I was told was have a cup of tea and go home. That was my treatment.
Wow.
So I got very, very strange, very sick, very, up in my head and reliving these traumatic events.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until 2 years later, when I was getting better and I was going out and having a career, and I was actually in Australia working on a movie, because I worked in Hollywood movies for many years. And I woke up one morning with my chin stuck down on my collarbone like this, screaming in pain. And I managed to get to a chiropractor. We were out in the bush in the middle of nowhere. And I walked to the next village to find a chiropractor. And luckily he had an X-ray machine. And I remember him saying, like, it was up against the wall and he was like getting me to stand up. He's got, stand up straight. I'm like, I can't. I was literally stuck in this position. And he said to me, did you know your neck is broken? I'm like, no. And instantly I had pictures of surgery, wheelchairs, being disabled for the rest of my life, forgetting that I'd actually walked in there, right? But when a man in a white coat says something like that, it's really powerful. And I got terrified. And he said to me, you're going to need treatment for the rest of your life, or else it's going to seize up like that again. Right? Now, I'm not a doctor.
Shivers down my
What do
spine.
I know?
When I hear that, it sends shivers down my whole spine.
I know, but I didn't know any different because I'm not a doctor. What do I know? So I had a monthly chiropractic appointment every month for the next 25 years.
Wow.
So wherever I lived, I worked in Hollywood, so I was moving, different locations, moved to California. I live in Israel now. Whenever I would go somewhere new, even on location, where's the chiropractor? Most people are asking, where's the post office or where's the cinema? I'm like, where's the chiropractor, right? And if I didn't go, it would start to seize up and it would get very stiff and painful in there. My shoulders were always very painful. And I always had lower back pain as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always told it's because of these 3 herniated discs. And I would get flare-ups about every 6 weeks. I would have times in between without pain, but then it would start to flare up again. And I would have these sessions where the muscles in the middle of my back would kind of squeeze and I start twisting sideways, and then my pelvis is like slanted, and then the sciatica pain would start shooting down my leg. And I was actually paralyzed several times and rushed into the hospital, losing power from my chest down, looking at my lower body, and it will not move. Absolutely terrifying. So whenever I would go to a doctor or an osteopath, the emergency room, and they would ask for my history, I tell them about all these injuries and they go, oh, well, that's why.
That's why. Mm-hmm.
That's why, right? Like, I would wake up with my arm numb sometimes and they would say, well, that's because the nerves for your arm are coming out of your neck where your neck was fractured. I'm like, okay. So I never actually was looking for a way to get rid of the pain, because I believed that that's just my lot in life and that's the way it's going to be. So I just would keep going to the chiropractor to keep away you know, in these really bad situations. And then when I'd still get flare-ups and I'd go for emergency appointments. And I had a routine. As soon as my back would start hurting, I'm on the phone with the chiropractor. I've got the yoga mat out. I've got the ice pack, the hot water bottle. You know, it was just my life. It was just how I lived.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like how I thought it would always be. In fact, I thought it would just get worse as I got older. Like one of these days, the feeling's not going to come back. One of these days, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. It's just, you know, how can it get better if I'm getting older? So that's kind of like was my story for like, say, 25 years, which is a long time. And then my pain has actually been gone for 6 years now.
Yeah.
And what happened was I'd always been a coach and a counselor. I trained when I was in college at Manchester University. I trained with Manchester Rape Crisis Centre back in the 80s. And I was trained how to do, you know, answer the hotline and coach people and with trauma and, you know, be an advocate, things like that. And so in between movies and the theatre projects, we often have a lot of downtime. I could have up to, you know, 2 or 3 months between a project. Mm-hmm. So I would continue doing the coaching and the counselling. So I was always up on the latest self-help stuff. You know, I got into the Course in Miracles and of course the Enneagram and, you know, all these different, you know, self-helpy type stuff. And I think that's what helped me get rid of the PTSD and got me out functioning in the world. But I still had all this chronic pain. So about 6 or 7 years ago, I came across this new paradigm in psychology, which we call the 3 principles. Sometimes it's called innate health. And I was so taken by it because it felt like I'd finally found a vocabulary to explain what I suspected was going on. Like I knew it was my thinking was the problem, but I thought, if I could just control my negative thinking and stay positive, that's the answer. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was sharing with my clients. You know, I had a lot of coaching clients and I would share that with them. But when I came across the 3 principles and I saw that all that busy work, you know, the gratitude lists and the journaling and the mindfulness and the meditation, which I was, you know, doing so hard because I'm a perfectionist and I got to get it done right. That was actually sending a lot of danger messages to my brain and keeping the fight or flight response going, mm-hmm. and keeping the pain generating. So as I started to slow down and started to learn that I don't actually have to do anything, my mind has its own healing mechanism, like the innate intelligence of the body can heal itself, so can the mind. Mm-hmm. My pain started to go away. And first of all, I noticed that my lower back pain and my neck pain had gone away, and it has not come back in 6 or 7 years now. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed that my IBS had gone away, mm-hmm. And my allergies. I mean, I have a bit of congestion here now, which since Corona, like I've just had this congestion, but my allergies have pretty much gone, which had been horrendous all the way through my childhood and through school. My high school bag was like a pharmacy, you know, and I now live in a place where I'm surrounded by olive trees and I'm allergic to olive blossom, and I'm okay. Right? I can't go for more than like 2 meters here without seeing an olive tree, and the allergies have gone away too. Skin wow. problems, all kinds of things have gotten better, wow. and I haven't actually worked on it. Wow. The way I see it is that it melted away because my nervous system got a chance to calm down, mm-hmm. because I started to understand how the mind works.
Mm-hmm. Can you share us, please, with that in mind? Can you share with us about the 3 principles? I would love to hear more.
Sure. So the 3 principles as an understanding of how the mind works was first put together by a man called Sydney Banks. Mm-hmm. He was a Scottish gentleman who ended up in Canada, in Vancouver. And he had what we could call an enlightenment experience. And he was on the story as I heard it was his wife had dragged him to some, you know, retreat and he was hating it. So he wandered outside and he met another guy who had been dragged by his wife and was hating it. And they started talking, and Sid started talking about he'd spent his whole life very insecure, you know, really stuck in his insecure thinking. And this other guy who was a stranger said to him, "You're not insecure. You just think you are." Mm-hmm. And Sid's mind just kind of went boom, you know, like he saw through the illusion of the story he'd been telling himself and started seeing the nature of thought. And that's where I really got excited and started seeing that, because like I said, I'd been looking at thought and I knew that negative thinking was the problem. Mm-hmm. But all the trainings and all the modalities and methods and techniques I'd learned were focusing on how to change that thinking, right? Fix it, reframe it, move it on, you know, push it away, ignore it even. And I can see now that thought itself is neutral, and it's always moving.
Mm-hmm.
So if thought is always moving through my mind, like a ticker tape or like clouds, there's lots of analogies you can use for how thought moves, then any kind of fixing or changing I'm doing is like dragging it back in so I can work out how to make it leave.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Right.
it already left, right?
Right.
So if you look back at any bad mood, hurt feelings, resentment, anger, frustration, it always passes. It
Mm-hmm.
always moves on. Now, it can feel like it gets stuck sometimes, but that's part of the illusion of being in a low mood, which is what happens when we're, listening to that kind of thinking. But the more I started to understand it, the more I got free of being a victim of it. And, all that thoughts about all the trauma that happened to me, which I was living in on a daily basis. No wonder my back was hurting. No wonder my stomach it was like screaming at me to slow down and get out of my head.
Right.
And I can do that now without needing to spend hours meditating or writing. It's just the way I live now. It's just an amazing blessing.
Beautiful. So it's this idea that you have a thought, but it's actually all the meaning and all the stuff on top of that thought that you put there. Like, I shouldn't be having this thought, or this thought, this thought is gonna, it leads to the next thought, which is in the train of thought that we talk about. So jumping off the train, or watching them go by and creating this muscle, like kind of like clarity muscle, just knowing that thought is just there and it's neutral, and whatever we put on the thought, or when we can jump into that thought or not. So that building that muscle of choice, or let's say control. I don't like the word control, but just having the knowledge that thoughts, we don't always have to jump on the train of thoughts, really helps.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so how did this practice actually work for your, how did that practice continue as your pain left you, or let's say you got pain relief? How did that work?
So I did I've done a lot of searching to see. I'd done a ton of searching before I came across the 3 principles, and I think, like I said, a lot of that busyness had kind of compounded the pain situation. So since I kind of understood the principles, I don't kind of really have a practice.
Okay.
I don't meditate. I don't write. I do write. I've written 2 books, but they're novels. I write for pleasure now. It's not. I'm not writing to fix anything, because I don't believe there's anything wrong. I go to my water aerobics class on Friday mornings, but not to strengthen my inner core, like all that stuff I used to do before with Pilates and yoga and all the busy work I had to do. I go because I enjoy it, and it's good to move a body. I walk. In fact, I just signed up for the marathon here. Not because I won't be running. I'm not a runner, but I love walking. So me and my friend are going to walk the 10K, which I'm really excited about, that I get to do that now. So I don't have a practice in terms of maintaining anything, because when I saw that I have innate well-being, then if it's innate, there's nothing to maintain.
Right.
Maintaining would be getting in the way, would be a misunderstanding. So most of what I do is I spend so much of my time now working with other people and having conversations like this, that's keeping it, in my forefront of my mind, that, when I'm explaining it to stuff. And like I said, I've written 2 books. I'm just finishing another one right now. And the first book was about trauma, excuse me. And that was like bringing the principles in and seeing how recovering from the trauma, which I thought was going to be with me for the rest of my life. We're often told in that world that we're broken, we're damaged, and there's also coping techniques to deal with that, with flashbacks and PTSD and hypervigilance and all that kind of stuff. And that's just melted away too, because that's not who I am. You cannot be broken.
So the idea that you had in your mind, you had these images that were created by, in fact, doctors who are doing their best, bless them.
Yes.
But unfortunately, a lot of the problem is compounded and actually perpetuated by the thoughts that we have of all these broken parts or herniated parts, or, which actually compound and make more the body to be even more in a stress response. And that's where the cause is, isn't it? It's the cause of our inability to relax. And so you said that by changing your thought, or not changing, by realizing that you are not your thoughts, just decoupled that whole process, like, almost immediately. How long did it actually take for it to completely eradicate, or all your problems or symptoms to be eased?
That's a hard question to answer, because like I said, I wasn't looking to get rid of it. So I don't really have when I realized my back pain had gone away, it was at the end of the 6-month course that I'd done, learning how to be a 3 principles practitioner. Excuse me. And I know that I didn't see the chiropractor during that time purely because I was saving money. I live in Jerusalem, and the course was in London, so I had to fly backwards and forwards many times, plus the expense of the course. So I needed to save some money, because whilst I was doing that, I wasn't working here, and it was an amazing investment, but I still had a budget. So I cancelled all my monthly chiropractic appointments, and I thought, she's nothing against her, she was brilliant, but I could always get an emergency appointment if I needed one. And then I forgot about it. And what amazes me is flying, sitting in airports, staying with friends. Those are all situations where my back would start hurting, or my stomach's going to start, or my skin's going to start, erupting. And nothing happened. And not only that, but it didn't even cross my mind that it wasn't happening. And then at the end of the course, and I remember sitting in this chair and going, that's weird. My back feels strong. Because like you said, I had this picture in my head that my back was weak. Yeah. And almost like, I don't know if you're familiar with Frida Kahlo. She's a Mexican artist.
I love her.
Right? So that's why on the cover of my second book, I have me dressed up as Frida. Right? But there's a famous painting of hers where she has her spine, because she was in a terrible accident. Her spine is a column, like a Roman column from like a Greek building. Yeah. And it's all fractured and crumbling. And that's how I pictured my spine to be. In fact, I can remember going to the chiropractor one time with, like, in agony, bent sideways. And the chiropractor said to me, well, what happened this time? I said, well, I turned to put my seatbelt on. And she goes, well, that'll do it. Yeah. And I think about that now, and that's crazy. Like, I was in my 30s at the time, like, strong. How can turning to put your seatbelt on be not something a body can cope with? Absolutely. But my mind couldn't cope with it because it had been programmed into thinking I'm weak. So to answer your question, I'm not sure how long it took, because as I sat here and thought, well, I haven't had any pain in 6 months. And I thought, I haven't had a flare up since. And I started trying to work it out, and I'm thinking, and I thought, oh my gosh, it hasn't been since I came across these ideas, which was 2 years at that point. Okay.
So you even forgot about it, because the idea is that then it just drops off your thinking, your thinking
it's not on my radar anymore. Now, I'll be honest, I can get a twinge every now and again, but because I know I've not broken anything, because I know there's no damage, I haven't hurt myself, I just laugh it off, and it doesn't turn into anything anymore. Beautiful. It's not in my conscious now that I'm weak, or that I'm gonna, that I'm damaged. I don't go around telling myself I'm strong. I don't even have to do affirmations. It's innate well-being. Innate means it's your nature. My nature is resilience and wisdom and good health. And so if I do get a cold, or I do get, a stomach bug, wisdom tells me how to take care of that. If I did I just did my knee once in a wedding a couple of years ago. So I just sat with some ice, on it for a little bit. And the next day it was fine. It didn't swell up. It didn't turn into anything. I just took care of it in the moment. No big deal. Next day was fine. So I think state of mind has so much to do with this, and understanding that everything passes. Now, if someone's in a flare-up, then just saying it's your thinking is not helpful, and it's not kind, and I wouldn't do that, because even though it's true, that could be confusing, and that actually might send more danger messages. And so if someone's in a flare-up, I would say to them, be as kind to yourself as possible. I know some people say, fight through the pain or breathe through the pain. I would say do what makes sense to you. I trust that you know how to take care of yourself. And then, because all pain is real, You know, there's like, I learned this from Dr. Schubiner, who's a medical, like mind-body medicine doctor. I did a course with him a few years ago. And he was saying, like, all pain is real. There's no such thing as real pain and imagined pain.
Absolutely.
So even if you know it's coming from a mind-body connection, it's still real. You're still feeling it. You know, you're not making it up. In fact, Dr. Sarna, who some of your listeners are probably familiar with, he said it was one of the worst pain he'd ever seen in 50 years of clinical practice. So it really hurts. So I say, follow your wisdom and do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. But as it starts to fade again, which pain always does, it goes in and out of our consciousness. That's where I want to see that, my gosh, it can go away. Mm-hmm. You know, and if it can go away a little bit, it can go away a little bit more. And then that's the direction I want to look in. Mm-hmm. Follow that, you know, that understanding. And I think that's why my pain went away and didn't come back.
Beautiful. So if you were you had your biggest lesson from pain, what would that be? I mean, like, I trying to encourage people to think about the pain as an opportunity for like a springboard or a transformation. So what for you, I mean, you're talking about, you had many different ideas and you were working on different modalities before, but what was the real kind of like life-changing moment that you realized that pain was here to tell you?
Well, I think it's actually what I learned, that pain is a signal. Mm-hmm. And when we have like an acute injury, like you cut your finger, you twist your ankle, pain in that situation is sent as a helpful message, because if I cut my finger, then I need to get, you know, stitches, or I need to get ice, or clean it up, or put a band-aid on it. If I twist my ankle, then I want to take my weight off that foot, because to keep walking on it would possibly cause more damage. Mm-hmm. But pain that's coming from a mind-body connection, you know, something that's stress related, that's also a signal. Mm-hmm. And I can see now, if I look back at the times when my back was flaring up all the time, I see now that I was very anxious at the time. I'm only just glimpsing that now, because I never thought of myself as an anxious person. You know, right. Like I said, I was a coach. I worked in Hollywood. You know, I'm tall. You know, like, people come to me for help. You know, I'm not anxious. But now when I look back and I think how much I was up in my head, terrified that you wouldn't like me, making sure I didn't make any mistakes, gotta be perfect, right? That is anxious thinking. But because I was right, I never questioned it, right? So most of my back pain came when I was working in movies, you know, with big movie stars, and, you know, crews of men who'd been doing this a long time. And I was a young woman, and I was terrified that they would think I was stupid, or I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to be the best all the time, right? And then I was a school teacher for 5 years, which, you know, standing in front of 24 7th grade girls is really terrifying. So I was always, you know, like, terrified they were going to tell their parents, and then their parents would tell the principal, and I'd get fired, you know. So what I see now is I was feeling my thinking. Right. Pain was me feeling my thinking. Now, a lot of 3 principles teachers will talk about feeling their thinking, and I usually interpret that as moods. You know, our moods go up and down depending on our thinking. But I think for us, people with chronic pain, we're feeling our pain in our bodies. Mm-hmm. We're feeling our thinking in our bodies, right? So that, to me, pain is a signal. Still now, whether I cut my finger or I get a tweak in my back, I'm like, okay, that's interesting. What's going on? Now, it doesn't mean I have to analyze anything. It just means I need to, like, watch that go by. And
yeah, like a light of consciousness to bring it in.
Right. And also it's a clue where my thinking is holding, because if I feel that low consciousness and feel that heavy mood, that's, to me, is a stop sign now to, like, not continuing that thinking, because it probably will end up in some pain. Right. So it's like part of that signaling system that the amazing intelligence of the body has to let us know that we're maybe going in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. And I see it now as a stop sign. And as soon as I see that I just got caught up in my thinking innocently, it's not, you know, it's not a fault. It just happened. It's human. Yeah. You can just pop out of it. Sometimes I pop out of it, which is kind of more rare, and really happy when I do. Usually it just kind of melts away. I kind of, like, just get on with what I need to do. And then you look around and you go, like, oh, where'd that mood go? Where did that bad thinking go? Where did that pain go? It just melts away, because it's not needed if I recognize the pain as a helping signal, right, rather than a signal to get anxious.
Right.
I see it now as a signal to see my health and say, I don't have to go there if I don't want to.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So this idea of not jumping on a train of negative thought, or let's say low vibrational thought, and having this like worry that creates more worry, that creates like a signal, like a spiral downwards, is a beautiful analogy. I like to use it in this sense that you can just say, okay, I'm looking now at the thought, cycle going downwards. I could jump on that train and go that way if I want, but otherwise I can just stay here for a little bit. I usually say, tune into the body and have this moment of, body sense. So you jump out of you pop out of the thought. That I like this idea of popping out of that thought train, and then you can do various different breathing, or just sensing, like feeling the sensations in your fingers, or the sensations, or sitting on the chair and just feeling your weight. And this helps me with regards to when I'm on that negative, or I don't like, negative is also making a judgment, right? So like having a spiral of, let's say, low vibrational thought, worry, anxiety, stress, then using those very simple techniques to just stay in your body at that moment, and then help give you the sense of like distance between your thought and your body. And that helps in itself to change your mood, or let's say, jump on the next train, which may be more upward spiraling. So yeah,
nice.
So the change in your life is miraculous, and I would like to just, if any of our listeners would like to know more about your work and how we can find you, and also like your message to pain survivors, or to try and help them start to become thrivers of pain. This idea that pain is there for a message was beautiful, and I would, if there's anything you'd like to say, anything more.
Sure. If you want to find me, I'm on Facebook. You can just Google my name, Chana Studley. And I have a Facebook group. I have over 2,500 people in it now, where I post pretty regularly about whatever my latest insights are. People ask questions. I share videos. So that's called Chronic Pain, TMS, and the 3 Principles. Maybe put a link, because I think I just got the name wrong. But yeah, so we'll have a link to that. Whereas a really nice community of being, because I think being supported, that's something I would say to people, is like being able to talk to people who have had that experience is very meaningful, because when we get told we're exaggerating or we're making it up, that can be very, very frustrating. And then I've written 2 books. The first one is called The Myth of Low Self-Esteem, and the second one is called Painless, and they're both on Amazon. Beautiful. And I have a website, which is my name, chanastudley.com. So all the information about that is there. Great. I just actually finished teaching an 8-week course, and based on Painless, based on the coaching, the coaching practice that I've done in the last few years. And what amazed me is I had 20 people sign up on this course, and half of them were medical people.
Oh, wow.
So I'm working with a lot of clinicians as well. Like I had 2 physiotherapists, 2 medical doctors, 2 chiropractors, a Feldenkrais practitioner. They were getting curious about, because they all have clients patients who aren't getting well, and they wanted to know what could they do to help them. So it was mind-blowing to me that I was teaching medically trained professionals. Thank God these people were open-minded to, a new way of seeing things. So yeah, I'm coaching and counseling people. And then I also am very excited because I'm doing a retreat, a wellness retreat in September in Massachusetts in America. It'll be over the weekend. It's in a beautiful location. We're right on the ocean front in someone's gorgeous house. So that's something I'm really excited about and looking forward to. I'm also going to London for the London 3 Principles Conference. I speak at these conferences quite regularly, which is a privilege as well. So yeah, I have a YouTube channel. There's lots of free videos on the YouTube channel as well. So I'm guessing you'll put all the links to that in
I will. I'll put them all. And one of the 3 principal books that I have, which is The Inside Out Revolution by Michael Neal, would you suggest that as a nice possible way into the 3 principles?
Yeah, I mean, Michael's work is amazing. He also has a podcast which is free, which I love his podcast because it's only like what 5-6 minutes long. Like, you know, you think a podcast, I've got to sit there for an hour. Like, and if your back's hurting or you're in pain, that's just like, don't want to go there anyway.
Yeah.
But his are just like between like about 6-7 minutes long, and they're full of great little thought for the day kind of thing. I listen to it while I'm doing the dishes or I'm walking somewhere, and that's a great way to kind of get a taste for this understanding. And then of course Sydney Banks's book, Sydney, who put these ideas together in the first place. There's a free website with 3 lectures from him, and he has several books, some of which are novels, and one of which is a collection of ideas. It's called The Missing Link. So I highly recommend going to the original material as well.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Any last moment message to the pain survivors? You can give them?
What's coming to my head is that it passes. It always passes. Even when people say they're in pain 24/7, I'll say to them, so if I followed you around with a camera, for the next 24 or 48 hours, you telling me there won't be any pain? Like, what about when you're watching your favorite TV show, or, I give examples and they go, yeah, but that's different. I'm like, so it can, even if it gets a little bit better, right? It does change. Like, we only experience pain when it comes into consciousness. Mm-hmm. So if it's not in my consciousness, it doesn't actually exist. And we want to look more in that direction, because if there isn't anything structural going on, it can go away.
Beautiful.
That's hope. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. It was a real pleasure, and I'll send all the links and put them all in the below. And I look forward to being on this again together.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. I'm just going to close my video now.